So we broke it down into different parts, and we'll get hopefully through all your questions that are in your minds right now as we go through it. And the first one we start with is the need. Why is there a need all of a sudden by the school district to be asking for additional funds from the local people? Well, we've been trying to do it for the last 4 years on our own by not asking for additional revenue from the local taxpayers. You'll see that in 3 of the last 4 years, we've made budget reductions. They're at the very bottom here. And in most recent year, the last school year, in the spring, we reduced the budget $398,675. And what has happened now after doing budget reductions 3 of the last 4 years, there isn't any room anymore within our budget that we can reduce without having a significant impact on changing the school district and who we are. And so that is why we are now come to the local taxpayers and asking for additional revenue to keep the school that we currently have today. So this is a common for the schools that are going out for referendums this year across the state. This is a shared common chart here that shows the inflation and how it is affecting the schools. And so how you read this is the solid line is the dollar amount per student that schools, all schools in Minnesota would need in order to keep up with the inflation. The dotted line in orange is the actual dollars each year that the state of Minnesota provides all school districts for each child in the school systems. And what you'll see is that even as back to the 2013, 2015, you can see the widening gap between the orange dotted line, the actual dollars from the state, and the solid purple line, what would actually be needed if you were to account for the inflation, the cost to educate students in Minnesota. So right now you can see in the fiscal year 2025 we're in, the way school systems work, we're in the 24-25 school year. It's considered the fiscal year 25. It's the second part of it. So in 2025 there you see it says $7,281 us school systems are receiving per student. If you were to account for the inflation that we're experiencing now, it would be $8,637. So you have a quite a gap there between what we're receiving and what the inflation is. In our questions, and we'll get to those throughout these slides, it's $750 per pupil is what questions 1 and 2 equate to in the ask in the referendum. So it's not asking for the entire difference, but trying to help close that gap a little bit. So the storyline that we're building throughout these approximately 20 PowerPoint slides is, why the need? What is the need? How did we get here? So there are 6 factors that are the primary driving forces behind why all of a sudden we have to ask for additional revenue. I just mentioned the first one, the rise in inflation rates. The second one, the conclusion of the ESSER funds. So I believe it's for 3 years that we had these additional dollars as a school system, and this was statewide and even nationwide. That to help school systems, the federal government gave dollars to help them through the pandemic. And schools had some flexibility as to how to use those dollars. And how we chose to do it were for things like taking those dollars and helping pay for part of the salary benefits of the school nurse, using some of that to pay for the elementary social worker. We used some of those funds to pay for a full-time custodian. Actually, we paid for a full-time custodian with it. So the third one, limited increase in state funding. We received, and that goes back to that question, we received 4% increase in the formula last year, and this year it was only 2%. To kind of put that into perspective, The Superintendent Association, the School Board Association, Rural Education Association, and others had asked the governor and the legislators a couple years ago when they did their 2-year budget to not give mandates, but instead give all school systems the 5% increase in year 1, 5% increase in year 2. Let the local school boards decide what is most needed in their school systems and to use those funds to provide the best education possible for the students. But instead, they chose to do the 4% in year 1, 2% in year 2, and then they did things like added mandates that cost school districts and will continue to have a lasting cost on school districts going forward. Declining student enrollment. So the way that schools work in their financial budgets, it's very complicated. Minnesota school finances is probably one of the most complicated, among the complicated in the nation. There's lots of formulas and formulas within formulas within formulas. There's a lot to it. But if you simplify it, students are the revenue. They're the driving force of your revenue. And then employees are the big part of your expenditure. About 80% of our expenditures, approximately, maybe 78, somewhere in there, are school employees. About 80% of our money comes from the state. They kind of closely match. So what really hurt us is that we actually lost. We didn't gain 20, 25 students. We didn't stay stable and just same enrollment. We actually dropped 31 students. So if some of you got your calculators out, and I don't know if we'll go back to that slide, but what was it, $7,000 some dollars? Just take even 7,000 and multiply it by 31 students, you can see how much money that is.
So, I mean, we do have a positive open enrollment, versus how many open enroll out versus how many open enroll in. So we do have more people coming in than we have going out. As for kind of like, I have talked to an individual here the other day that actually lives in our district, 6 kids, just like you said, sends them to ROTC. I just asked why, and they just said they had a couple of their older kids just needs a little more help, and they enjoy the extremely small class sizes in ROTC. And that's pretty hard to compete with, if they have a total grade of 16 versus our 70, even though we have 4 sections. I mean, it's fairly comparable for the most part, but I mean, there is some people that view it that way, and it's hard to retain them or change their minds on that. They kind of is what it is.
So I'm going to touch on these, but rather quickly, because these are actual big factors that play into the 6. Employee contract settlements, school employee contract settlements have been higher than average. So every 2 years, we negotiate with our largest bargaining group, which are our teachers. It's statewide. We had to go higher than we have in a while. And the reason for this, because we had our governor and some legislators saying we had all this money in the state, which then drives unions across the state for schools to say, oh, we have all this money, we can ask for all this money to our local school boards. And that really wasn't, it wasn't true. But how it works is that we held out and we thought we gave a good offer. They wanted more. We finally settled on an agreement that matched the other, real close, the other 30-some school districts that are right in our neighborhood. So we're talking from Alexandria to Moorhead to New York Mills and all in between. It was, a 10% total package over 2 years. That's higher than what we normally do. And so it costs a little bit more, and it's going to continue in our budget. So it's not, and some people, especially if they were maybe locally impacted in a positive way, say, oh, you're attacking us. No, I'm not. I'm just being real. This is what affects our budget. And if it was just Barnesville, it'd be one thing. It was all of the schools in this area. It was all very similar in the total cost increase in percentage. So it's not unique. It's just everybody went higher because our state government said we had all this money. And that was a statewide thing as well. Well, it plays into the finances for the school district. New state mandates, they also, I don't know why they're doing it. Us superintendent associations, school board associations, we don't know why the trifecta government is doing this, but they're adding costs to us at a time that we don't need additional costs. So we have two different categories of questions on the ballot. One is the operating levy, and the other is the capital project levy. The operating levy is 2 questions, questions 1 and 2. Capital project is 3. So questions 1 and 2 is the dollars that are requested to fill in right around that $650,000, so that we can just continue to operate with where we are today. The capital project levy is what I pointed out earlier, like what Andy has shared. One of the major ways that we've been able to balance our budget, well, and actually not fully, we've had to use some fund balance, but is to not purchase the textbooks that we need for the kids. Or now we've pushed off purchasing the iPads that were supposed to be new this year in the rotation. So we've delayed those things. So that's what the capital project levy is. So the first 2 is operations, to keep things operating, and the capital project levy is to secure textbooks and technology for the teachers and the students. When you total it all together, it is, just shy of $1 million is what it is. A lot of people want to know, what is this money going to be used for? And so we put together, these are the things that we see them being used for. Preserve the current class sizes, retain and attract the best teachers and staff, provide the reading specialists and academic support the essential workers like the nurse, the social worker, mental health. We'd like to enhance our career and technical education, such as agriculture and the construction trades, and offer a wide variety of activity sports for all students. So we want to keep because we have a great teaching staff and support staff, we want to keep all of them. Providing the reading specialist, the MTSS coordinator, that was one of the things that we put in recently. That was also, we used ESSER dollars for, the federal dollars through COVID, to have an MTSS coordinator used primarily at the elementary. It's to help use data to support the teachers in supporting students in their learning. Right now, we had to put that back onto the general fund because the ESSER dollars are gone. It has made, if you want to learn more about the MTSS coordinator and the impact it's having, visit with an elementary teacher or visit with the elementary principal. Without this referendum being approved, we would have to look at eliminating that position that we just added a couple years ago. So this is very similar to that other slide, but it does give a dollar amount. So it is estimated, based on the financial projections, it would be $687,177 that we would look at reducing our budget this spring if questions 1 and 2 are not approved. So question 1 would be increasing it $500 per pupil. Question 2, which we'll get to in a second, is raising an additional $250. We did look at the board and I as to our real need is $750 per pupil to get to that dollar amount in the 600s to maintain what we have. But we know it is not a great time to be asking for more money. Any amount of money is not a good time for, I would say, almost all families and businesses and farmers and et cetera. But unfortunately, we don't have a choice. We have to ask to keep what we do. And if we ask for the full $750, there is so much at stake that if there was one question and people voted it down, the school would change so dramatically. So we figured, well, let's split it into 2 questions. Let's ask for the $500 per pupil. If we get that approved, question number 1, it would generate $400,000. We'll go into January. We'll have Jody do the financial projections. We'll see where we're at. We know we'll have to reduce the budget some. We'll have to let some positions go or do some cost savings or maybe some revenue generating, but it won't be a complete change of the school system. It would be, okay, so we don't have elementary art anymore or this, that. And I don't want to say what it is exactly, but some of the new things that maybe we've added, we would have to now go back to what we didn't have before. But it wouldn't totally change the school system. That's why we broke it up, because it was just too much risk to put it onto one question. So that is what we're trying, because that's one of the things we had feedback of 5 different meetings last week. We got back from people. One of the main ones was you need to make sure that people realize that the only way for question 2 to pass is for question 1 to pass. And so we're going to keep trying to get that message out there. So then the capital project levy We know, because we've been pushing these things off, and I don't need to keep talking that in circles on that, but we know that we want to have these tools in our children's hands. And this one, instead of being for 5 years, we did put it out there for 10 years. So we could really lock ourselves into a commitment to have technology and curriculum for the students. And I'll give you one example as to why. Because the curriculum review cycle that we do is on a 7-year. So like what schools do, like us, if you can and you want to, is you take English language arts. You purchase all the curriculum from preschool through grade 12, say this school year. And then next school year, you would do the same preschool through grade 12, and you would go to another subject area, like social studies. And then the third year, you'd go to, another one. And then you'd get, the PE and the foreign language and the arts and stuff like that. So all the different subject areas and all the grade levels would be included, and it'd be every 7 years. And if you can think about that, how much time and how much things change in 7 years. So by the time you get your language arts curriculum, they have to wait then 7 years to come back around and get new ones again. That is on, an approval of something like this. Without an approval on something like this, it's more years that extend, and it's minimal stuff that is purchased for curriculum. So that's why a 10-year commitment gives okay, we're going to get through 7 years of every subject area and grade level, and then we'll start it over again on year 8. Okay, so the next slide, this gives the information as to, there's a lot there, but I think we pretty much covered it all. It would generate, it'd be for 10 years, question 3, it would generate $300,000 a year, and that is what it would be costing for the curriculum and technology each year. Next slide, please. So how will agriculture land, now we're moving into a new category, tax impact, and talking about that next. So, we learned some things too. We asked questions ourselves of Ellers. How does an operating levy affect our residents? How does it affect our businesses? How does it affect our farmers? And then how differently does the capital project affect the 3 different areas? And so when you get to the ag land, on the first 2 questions, that's why I have it up there in purple, questions 1 and 2, they're the operating. Their ag land is not taxed. It is 0. They pay the same or similar as somebody who owns a home in town. They would pay for their home, their garage, and 1 acre. So they're treated the same as somebody who lives in town as far as that. Would they be taxed on questions 1 and 2? On question 3, that one they would be taxed under the capital project levy, and we'll get into that as to what their tax rate would be. So the building project, this beautiful school that we built, the farmers are they're definitely taxed on that. They would be on this capital too. But the operating, they'd be treated like somebody living in town. So then this gets into lots of numbers, but I'm going to point out the columns. If you go to the column at the top, it says question 1, operating referendum. That's that $500 per pupil it would generate. Based on the current enrollment, it would generate $435,101. Moving to the right, question 2, you'll see that $250 per pupil we talked about, generating $217,550. So if you add those together, you're right around that $650,000 that it would generate to avoid that $650,000+ budget reduction that we're facing. So that's what questions 1 and 2 equal. Question 3, you can see it's that $300,000 that it would generate for the technology and the curriculum. If you go and you look at where it would affect you, and you can, I guess I'll point out here, let's go to the very bottom, the agricultural homestead. You'll see again in the first 2 columns, question 1 and question 2, there's all zeros because again, the ag land is not taxed on the operating referendum. Then you go over to question 3, and then you see how they start to be taxed on that. And we do have 2 farmers on the board over here, and they can, I won't speak for them maybe, but Do you want to speak to that? Jake, I guess I don't want to speak for you, but I think you're in support of it.
Yeah, so I guess looking at that, we've discussed it. Like we've like it's been explained earlier, first question 1 and 2 operating referendum is used towards everything within the school. Question 3 is directly involved with curriculum and tech. And way that is set up, being more heavily taxed on the ag land, we felt as a couple of guys sitting up here that the school, we were expecting to pay a lot more than we did thanks to a tax credit through the state after that we got this building referendum passed. So if we could keep it close to about 50 cents an acre for that hardcore learning, the actual curriculum, actual technology, most farmers would hopefully accept that based on the fact that we were probably expecting to pay about $2.50 more an acre for the school levy. So we're hoping that most people believe the same thing we do, that should be able to be absorbed.
So this slide would show the average valuation of a home in Barnesville Public School, not the town of Barnesville, but the whole school district, because it's a slight difference. It is $265,000, and if all 3 questions passed, it'd be $32 a month. But this link, this website right here at Ellers, is where we would encourage everyone to go, because you can go to that and you can put in your property and you can get exactly what your tax impact would be. And that is located on our school website under the information for the referendum. So I would hope that everyone would know about that and would do it so that they're knowledgeable as to how they would be impacted. This is put here because people ask us, if this doesn't pass, what are you going to do? Well, it's hard to say completely, but yes, it is a fair question, and yes, these are things that are most likely going to happen. So you've probably been reading that as I was talking, and yep, eliminating teachers and staff positions, increase in class sizes, reducing course offers and programs at all grade levels, reducing academic support, mental health services. This is my 6th year as superintendent here. When I came, we didn't have, the mental health support. We've added the elementary social worker. We have a full-time nurse at the elementary, health aide at the high school, and they are highly needed. If I was to select, and it's public, if I was to select, they're all important positions in the school district, but if I was to pick one that really I would want to keep on my team for the kids, it would be the school nurse. There are so many. Every day that I go by, my office is right next to theirs, constantly students are going in and out and constantly helping children with their health needs. If you were a parent of a diabetic child in elementary school, you better believe you're going to want a school nurse on the team. And so it's things like that that we have put in place and are trying to keep. Social workers, same thing. Even though maybe we have some of the less issues that other families face in other parts of the state or nation, we still have children that have needs. They might not be as much. There may be some 1 or 2 counseling sessions or support services a couple times, and maybe some are scheduled ongoing for years. But our kids have needs too, and so we want to keep that for them. And then, it was important. The admin team said we better make sure that people are aware. It's not just class sizes, programs, stuff like that. But this is also about coaches, advisors, extracurricular activities, sports. It's about students who participate and help in theater and things like that. It's system-wide, the thing will have to be looked at. But if question 1 passes, question 2 doesn't, anticipate some reductions, but not completely changing a district. Next one. If question 3 fails, we'll have some tough decisions to make on that, because as we mentioned, we took the iPads into a 4th year, and they're good, they're fine, they can go Casey told me, the technology director, that we can get through another year, but to get into a 5th year is going to be the real challenge, because more are going to break down, there's going to be costs, and that's going to be a tough one going into the next school year. So I thought this would be of interest to you. This was us area superintendents that meet regularly in Fergus Falls at the Lakes Country Service Co-op. Not everybody gives their data and information, but we have various things that we'll share with each other. We don't make them public to everybody because we're just trying to help each other out and see where we're at. And so I took off the school names because it's really irrelevant, but they're from large schools, Alexandria, Moorhead, to smaller schools like Rothsay and others, and all in between. But what's interesting is, where do we compare in our class sizes? Because it was a priority of a prior referendum to have small class sizes and maintain those. And what our thing has been here at Barnesville is that we want to have and have been maintaining 4 sections of grades kindergarten 1 and 2. And then we go to 3 sections in grades 3 and up. Well, that's what would be at risk, is that we would, without question 1 passing, then we would have to seriously look at, we'd be 3 sections in K1 and 2 as well. And if you look at, well, how do we sit in our small class sizes in comparison? And you'll see in kindergarten, and again, this is data was taken in, I believe, the spring of 2023. So it is a year old, but a lot does happen in all these school districts, but it's probably pretty similar to this yet. But we had 20 in kindergarten, and the average was 18. In first grade, we had 18, and 18 was the average. But if you look at some of the other ones, like in 4th grade, we had 25, and the average was 20. In 5th grade, it was 24, and the average was 21. And so, we have done things, and we have not made them into a 4th section because, there's financial cost to that. And so we've tried to maintain the small class sizes we can for our students. And if we did not receive the questions 1 and 2, then those numbers are going to go up even higher. And we're really going to get out of alignment with all the other schools in the area.
What is not on any of the slides but is in your packet is that last sheet with the orange headlines. And those are tax credits and deferrals that have been around for a long time in the state of Minnesota. The homestead credit refund. It's also available to renters. And on the second page of that, the special property tax refund, and then the senior citizens property tax deferral. And on the senior citizen deferral, they increased the limit to $96,000 from the previous amount. Just want to mention those. That doesn't affect the amount of money that would come into the school district, but that would be an opportunity that people could apply for if they so choose.
Thank you. And we visited at the FFA alumni. My weeks get messed up. I think it was like last week, Monday, I think it was. But like I told that group, I don't see in a community like ours, if we did budget reductions, like we're not going to have an egg program. I don't see that. I've had to be in similar sized schools where we had to go down to like a 3/4 time egg teacher. I didn't tell them that, but I don't see us really doing that. But you need to know that egg will not grow. The program won't grow and improve. So even those programs that may not get eliminated, the district, you ask your principal or your district office, we need some money for that. No, we don't have the money. So it has an effect on the whole school system, even if you think that maybe something would be safe. It really won't. It would be impacted in some minor ways, some big ways. If you read and you look around, we're not the only school district. And I visit with the auditor. Every year we get audited in the summer, is what Jody has us set up. And every year I got to go through the one-to-one, close the door, her and I, and you speculate any fraud. They go through the questions that they always have. And no. And I said, but I have one concern. I said, we have to go out for a referendum in our budget and talk a little bit about that. And she's like, John, it's everyone. It's not just you. I'm like, yeah, I know it's not, but it's still, it's not something I want to be doing. So yeah, people can ask this and that, but I look at it too and I tell people, we've had board members who've been on for years on the board. They're fiscally responsible people. Jim Joy came to the school board meeting after the last budget was set, and he said what we did at the state legislature, in 2 years from now, you're going to be making tough choices and doing things. You're going to get blamed as a school board and superintendent, and it's our fault at the state legislature and governor, whatever, the state level. And we know that that's true. And unfortunately, when 80% of our revenue comes from the state, we are dependent on the state heavily. I think there was a really good start to our first of 4 hopefully the information came across clearly. If it didn't, any of us are available, or the other school board members are available, even one-on-one meetings with you, sit down in my office or meet you somewhere, or small groups of you. So thank you very much for being here tonight.